Danny Green suffered a very serious looking left knee injury earlier tonight when Joel Embiid unfortunately fell into his leg here on this play. Welcome back everybody, I'm Dr. Brian Sutterer and this is your number one source for learning about the unique medical side of the world of sports. This play was just extremely unlucky in terms of how Embiid fell into Danny Green's leg, but what we see happen to Green's left knee is a result of different movements that explains the type of injuries that we could see with this type of a mechanism. The first thing that we see is when Embiid falls, he kind of lands on the thigh or a little bit higher up, kind of proximal to the knee, and that forces Green's knee to go into a little bit of what looks like hyperextension. Flexion, of course, is what Green's knee is doing here on the right side, and so extension is going to be the fact that his knee looks like it was bent straight beyond what it wants to go to, or beyond neutral. Now that in and of itself can cause a lot of injury to the knee, but what really gets severe here is when there's a significant amount of forced varus stress on Green's knee, causing his knee to go outward. We can see the remnants of it right here a little bit. Of course, this is Green's foot right here beneath Embiid. And so what he has is this severe angle where that knee is being pushed outward. And what that's going to do is stress all the ligaments on the outside portion of the knee. The third thing we see here is a significant amount of twist or torsion. Here as Embiid is kind of rolling off of Green, you can see how much twist has been imparted through his knee based on that position with how his foot is pointed forward underneath Embiid. So we've got some hyperextension, we've got a forced varus mechanism combined with this torsion, which leads to what we could see in terms of severity with the injury. Looking at those three positions from a different angle, the first thing here when Embiid makes contact with the top of his thigh, right there we see a little bit of hyperextension. He then continues forward, causing that severe amount of varus force with the load on the inside portion of his knee, pushing his knee outward. And then as that play continues on, we see that severe amount of twist or torsion, again from this different angle. We'll talk about what that combination can lead to in terms of injury severity, but first I want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of today's video. Today's video is sponsored by Element, an electrolyte drink mix that's perfect for anybody looking to either supplement or help replenish their lost electrolytes. Summer's right around the corner, and with that comes more time outside in the sun. And of course, that means more sweating and more loss of your electrolytes. Basically, every cell and process in our body relies on electrolytes, and so you can imagine if those electrolytes become imbalanced or deficient, you can have a whole host of side effects. For athletes, this can be things like muscle cramps or fatigue that can affect your performance. Element is an electrolyte drink mix that features 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium with no added sugar or artificial sweeteners. Its quality is trusted by elite athletes as the official hydration partner of Team USA weightlifting. Right now, if you head to drinklmnt.com/BrianMD, you're going to get a sample pack with 8 unique flavors and only pay $5 for shipping. That way you can try all their flavors risk-free and find out whether or not the product is right for you. So get those electrolytes replenished and help support this channel while you're at it. Thank you again to Element for sponsoring today's video, and let's get back to our learning. This certainly has the potential to be a very serious, even multi-ligament knee injury just based on all the forces we saw transmitted through Green's knee. There's a couple different key positions here. I think this is sort of one of them where we can see how much extra varus position there is with Green's knee bent outward. But then also, even just at the very beginning when Embiid lands, that forced hyperextension combined with that varus load. When I see a mechanism like this covering an event, I'm going to honestly be concerned about a possible knee dislocation that could have been transient enough where the knee is back in place. And so to me, this looks like something that has enough concern to extend beyond just a single ligament injury that you need to do your due diligence with your exam to be very certain that there isn't a multi-ligament knee injury. One of the key positions we talked about was that excess varus force on the knee. So here Embiid falls into the inside of his knee, pushing his knee outward. And what that's going to do is stress the components on the outer portion of the knee. With our biodigital anatomy tool here, I've shown some additional structures we don't always talk about with the knee. So here we're looking straight on at a left knee, and this portion is going to be the lateral or the outer aspect of the knee. It's where the fibula bone sits and a number of key ligaments. The one you've most likely heard of is called the LCL or FCL for lateral collateral ligament or fibular collateral ligament. It's this guy right here that runs north to south. But there's a whole group of structures on this corner of the knee that we call the posterolateral corner. And there's a lot more that's here that I just don't have shown in this anatomy model, but one of them is actually even the tendon of a muscle, the popliteus muscle. So anytime we see a significant enough injury where there's been varus force, meaning a load that came in from this direction, causing the knee to bow outwards, we really run the risk of injuring all these structures on that posterolateral corner of the knee. These are very complex injuries, and so they can be a real challenge in terms of rehab and surgical decision-making. The added component of rotation we saw with Green's mechanism makes me worry about that, combined with a little bit of the hyperextension. But then we also have to think about the menisci that sit inside the knee, because we know that any sort of twisting mechanism can cause some shear to the meniscus, particularly when the knee is in a flexed position. When the knee is flexed, that puts a lot more pressure on this posterior or back portion of the meniscus, making it more predisposed to injury when you combine a flexion with a twist. Going back to this play again, we can point out that twist where we have that combination as Embiid is rolling off of some knee flexion here at the end, combined with that twist. So it's really more this position where I think about the meniscus tear, likely even more on the medial side of the meniscus because of where we're going to have compression through the knee. When we're worried about a knee dislocation, we'll make sure we check the blood flow down in the ankle and the foot. We'll make sure we check the function of the nerves as well, because in particular, whenever we have an injury to this outer portion of the knee, there's a key nerve that sits out here called the peroneal or the fibular nerve. It runs right along this area, very superficial to the skin. And so when we see these severe varus injuries, like we saw with Danny Green, there's also high risk of injury to that nerve from it stretching because of the extreme amount of tension that's put through the knee with that varus position. Walking through all this one more time, the first thing we're going to see is a little bit of forced hyperextension. Right here as Embiid falls on Danny Green's distal thigh, just above his knee. That quickly transitions into a forced varus position where the Embiid's weight on the inside of Danny Green's knee pushes his knee outward, which stretches the ligaments on the outside of the knee, as well as at the posterolateral corner. The play continues where we have some additional torsion imparted through Danny Green's knee with that twist, with the flexion, but we also have to worry about injury to things like the meniscus sitting deeper inside the knee. This is significant enough that we always want to make sure we check for injury to blood vessels or nerves, or potentially even a transient dislocation where the knee might have temporarily shifted out of place, but is now back in proper alignment. Green is scheduled to have an MRI on his knee, and that'll certainly guide what's necessary for treatment in terms of surgical or non-surgical. That's it for the video, everybody. Let me know as always any questions or comments down below. And until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.